OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. We're here with you every morning from 7:30 until 9:30, and we'd like you to get involved. You can use the hashtag OTB AM on Twitter, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Loads of people listening on OTB Sports Radio. Best place to do that is on the Go Loud app or on the offtheball.com website. Owen is here as he is every morning. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you getting on?
Are you a fan of yellow balls, Owen?
Well, it seems we'll all have to be, won't we? Because yellow balls are now the new white balls, and that's just the reality we've got to get used to.
Only in hurling we're talking about here.
Oh, okay, only in hurling then. Let's just go with that. Clearly the correct thing to do, because white balls just don't make sense in the white heat of league battle when the floodlights are on and you can't
What about
really see
in summertime? What about, are the traditionalists not going to be like, I do like an hour white ball?
Is this being used for everything? Is this being used for
yeah,
summertime?
that was my take from... so the story here is in the Examiner today. Sean Fogarty has it. And a new standardised smart letters are planned to be in place for next year's All-Ireland Championship. So that would be for the summertime.
Why are they smart?
They got a chip in it. The
chip, what?
The chip, a smartphone app will tell you whether or not this ball is suitable for play or not. Okay.
So there'll be no soaking slitters in the bathwater like
I think if that happens, Babs wasn't alone now.
Oh, a furthest thing from alone.
I think Cork and Clare have had their own balls issues in the past. Yeah, I don't know. Like the white ball looks cool, but the yellow ball might just be the way of the future.
But it's more practical.
At some point, they will be able to take data from the chip, so you'll know like speed, distance travelled, I guess the age of the ball,
or whether or not it's crossed the crossbar would be.
That's not mentioned. I would assume that there was like a field of play, so it goes out, a buzz happens in the ear.
Like that would be an actual practical reason. It'd be great to know the statistics we get at half-time in big inter-county games would be phenomenal. How hard did Anthony Nash hit that ball?
Yeah.
It'll really...
That would be class.
So, but...
They were going to release it, I think, recently enough, but they held on to make sure that it was absolutely secure and that it was going to be fine, and they've been testing it out in DCU, so this is good. Like, eventually, if it's able to tell whether or not it's crossed the line, that's all you want, right?
It would be. That is all you want. Like, hopefully it is the start of more microchipped things or more like technological. The GPS being attached to the humans is where we're at the moment, but not exactly microchipped just yet. Is there a way of like implementing drink bans by microchipping all your players, for example?
Yes, I'm sure, yeah. Or like poisoning them against alcohol for certain periods of the year. Flick the switch and suddenly the merest smell of a pint and they're puking.
A beeping noise goes off when somebody's credit card purchases 4 Tuborg cans, and that's it, you're off the inter-county panel. Technology it's only in its infancy in the GAA.
Yeah.
We need to see more of these. What are the other big technological things that we need to look into?
Well, we should talk about this, because yesterday there was a piece in one of the papers about in about 20 years' time they think they're going to be able to regrow brain cells. So effectively your generation, the 25-year-olds now, are going to be the generation...
Very encouraging news.
Well, is it though? Do you want to live forever?
Well, it's not living forever.
Well, the ultimate thing was, yeah, we're going to be able to, a few injections. Like Hollywood actors are getting Botox now, we'll all be getting regenerative brain cells planted into us. Well, I don't know if those of us in our early 40s are going to be around to see this, Owen. But you should certainly, to survive, to reach the point of destruction of the planet.
Sign me up.
That's everybody's aim.
Well, yeah, that is always the kind of consolation where you kind of like wake up some mornings and you're like, am I going to die today? And it's like, well, the positive is I don't get to see the planet burn to death. And that's always kind of the consolation I take from those sort of moments. But maybe not anymore. Would I get... I've not actually heard about this until right now. I'm sure there are other ways you can die rather than your brain cells withering away, but if that's the way I was going to go, it doesn't really sound very pleasant. So sign me up, whoever they are. Is this
Boffins?
Is this Elon Musk or something who's
no.
He'll regenerate your brain cells and fly to Mars?
I am surprised that Elon Musk hasn't managed to raise billions from, the needy who want to live forever. Maybe this is a good business idea for us.
It really is. Brain X.
You can pretend to be the science. Yeah. All right, here's what's coming up on the show for you today. We've got a very busy show for you. We're going to talk about the Champions League with Graham Hunter around about 8 o'clock this morning. Katie versus Leinster. So this is where we start to try and weed out some stuff. It's going to be Katie Taylor, right? Because everybody's going to vote for Katie Taylor. But Leinster's comeback. I presume it's Leinster's comeback against Northampton, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a pretty amazing thing. That should crystallise. That should mobilise certainly one portion of the rugby voters. I guess everybody from Munster is voting for Katie Taylor. Going to talk about Patrick Reed around about 9:20. Cormac Moore, this is a book on GAA rivalries that's out. He was in studio talking about it.
A book on the partition. So it's a book kind of generally about the partition, but then there's like a sports chapter, the last chapter on it, which we focus in on. So he's obviously written about the Irish soccer split previously. We recorded his interview last week and mentioned his own previous ideas on the Irish soccer split. Of course, Paul Rouse was on the show last night. Had some very interesting things to say about that exact topic. And it does come up in our conversation at the end about the possibility of the IFA and the FAI perhaps reconvening. And like the book is about how politics had such political interference in sport after partition, except for one sport, which was soccer. Their politics were all internal. That is the reason why the Irish soccer split happened. It wasn't so much to do with what happened in the UK or what Michael Collins came home with. It was more to do with what was actually happening inside the organisation, which is kind of fitting. Things haven't changed all that much.
I always assumed that it broke down on religious lines.
No, it was. That played a part for sure, but it was more to do with the former.
And we've also got a piece on the great GAA raffles of our time that's coming your way at around about 8:45 this morning. So if you want to get in touch, as ever, use the hashtag OTB AM. And if you want to talk to us about anything that's going on in your life, then feel free to do so. Including if you've got any Christmas present recommendations that you'd like to get off your chest, we'd like to hear them from you this morning. Right, time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
That's got the bang of somebody who's about to go Christmas shopping today and desperately needs some suggestions.
Well, we're always looking, right? What are you getting?
I don't know.
What are you buying for people?
Yeah,
What's your standard gift?
I don't have a standard gift. I've varied wildly from standard gift to standard gift.
But season on season, though, surely you find one thing to buy for everybody. Okay, that's worked.
I've gone from like cheap box sets up to a Fitbit Versa, which I gave as a gift to my dad last year.
Do you use it?
Yeah, he did.
All right, still using it like?
Well, the strap is broken at the moment, so I must buy a new one of those. But
right.
No, he got to March with it, which is...
It's okay.
That's €100 for every month. Well done there. Great bang for my buck.
Owen's bitter about the fact that he invested on his dad. There you go. Kids, eh? Sports Tuesday in the Irish Times. Lampard urges Chelsea to embrace big night with Lille. Hey. This is Jacob Steinberg reporting in London from the Guardian Service. And obviously that's a match preview. And there's another one there from Andy Hunter in Salzburg as Red Bull entertain Liverpool this evening, and all the talk obviously about Red Bull's scoring phenom Haaland. So we'll see exactly if anybody's going to sign him in the transfer window. Some talk Manchester United were interested, and they might get some business done at January, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. And then obviously the FAI story is rumbling on here. SIP2 seeking clarity on job security at the FAI. So this is Emmett Malone with this piece, which ultimately, when it comes down to it, is probably the most important part of the story, is those people who are working for the FAI wanting to know that their jobs are safe. Here we are at the 10th of December, so 3 weeks out from Christmas, and he's been speaking with SIP2. The union representing many of the FAI staff hopes to meet with management of the association over the coming days in order to get some clarity with regard to how the financial crisis in Abbottstown is likely to impact on its members. Obviously, massive concern for the staff there, and just listening, I'm sure, for them to how profligate the spending was at the FAI and how badly run the finances of the FAI have been over the last decade and a half must have been incredibly worrying.
The back page of the Sun this morning is Freddie Starr's Ate My Hammers, and it could be the end of the rodent for Pellegrini. Is this...
Genius, no?
I can tell from the headline and the length of it that it is genius, but I don't get it.
Really?
I really don't get it. Unless there's, I'm not sure it's me just...
Okay, it's just an age thing.
I hope it's an age thing.
Freddie Starr ate my hamster.
I've never heard of that.
So, Freddie Starr was a comedian who died in the last 18 months. And the story, which might have been one of the biggest selling newspapers in the history of English newspapers, they put Freddie Starr ate my hamster as a true story, as in Freddie Starr...
Was it the Sun?
I think it was the Sun. It must have been, otherwise...
Hence...
we can get the headline, I'm sure.
You've also... so that's obviously to do with West Ham on Arsenal 3 last night. You've also got Darryl...
it's Freddie Lundberg, and they ate my hammers.
And it's ended a rodent for Pellegrini because a hamster...
Is a rodent.
Is a rodent.
Well, I got that bit. That bit's unnecessary. That was just like...
Well, it was...
There you go. Freddie Starr ate my hamster. The Sun. Comic put a live pet in sandwich, says Beauty. What year are we on?
86 maybe? I don't know. I can't make that out. Yeah, that is 50 grand in bingo.
86, yeah.
86, 50 grand. Where's your inflation in bingo winnings gone? The Sun is what I would want to say. You've also got on the back page. That's an incredible story. I've never heard about that. So what, like, was there an actual hamster in a sandwich?
According to Wikipedia, Freddie Starr was the subject of one of the best-known British tabloid newspaper headlines. On the 13th of March, 1986, The Sun carried as its main headline, "Freddie Starr ate my hamster." According to the text of the story, Starr had been staying at the home of Vince McCaffrey and his 23-year-old girlfriend, Lee LaSalle, in Birchwood, Cheshire, when the alleged incident took place. Starr was claimed to have returned home from a performance at a Manchester nightclub in the early hours of the morning and demanded that LaSalle make him a sandwich. When she refused, he went into the kitchen and put her hamster, Supersonic, between two slices of bread and proceeded to eat it. Man, the drugs they had in the 80s must have been pretty hardcore.
Jesus.
He later denies this in his autobiography and says it was a complete fabrication. "I've never eaten or even nibbled a live hamster, gerbil, guinea pig, mouse, shrew, vole, or any other small mammal."
Well, Freddie Lumberg didn't eat anything last night, but that is the headline there. Freddie Starr has ate my hammers.
Story gets worse.
There's more.
The man behind the hamster story was the British publicist Max Clifford, now disgraced. At that time, he was Starr's agent, who concocted the story as a practical joke. When asked in a television interview with Esther Rantzen some years later whether Starr really had eaten a hamster, his reply was, of course not. Clifford was unapologetic, insisting the story given a huge boost to Starr's career. And then in 2006, it became "Freddie Starr ate my hamster," the most familiar British newspaper headline of the last century, according to the BBC. And then at the end, it became too much for Freddie. The hamster story trapped him like a hamster in a cage. May 2019, so they're still gone. Woman reveals what really happened on day he ate her hamster, which it turns out is nothing. So I'm fed up with people shouting out, "Did you eat that hamster, Freddie?" Now I say, "Give me a pound and I'll tell you." If they gave me a pound, I'd say no and I walk away. Things didn't end very well for Freddie. Or Max Clifford, for that matter.
This is peak media, clearly, I missed.
And when he died, the Sun's headline? Freddie Starr joins his hamster.
Journalism really is just a rat race to the bottom.
Hey.
Daryl on the back page of the Sun, my drug ban, Daryl Murphy.
Tommy didn't get that.
He didn't get it.
No.
Daryl Murphy has revealed he secretly served a ban last year for taking cocaine on a night out. So had a former Ireland striker who's now at Bolton, was suspended for 6 weeks with Nottingham Forest in 2018. This hadn't come to light until now. He did an interview with Daniel Taylor of The Athletic. And he says, "Firstly, I would like to stress that the taking of recreational drugs is something that I don't condone whatsoever. I served a suspension at the beginning of last season for making a bad decision while on a night out. This was an isolated incident which happened out of competition when we had no game, and I immediately regretted it. I'm not proud of my actions. So I'm not proud of what I did, but it's something I've put behind me as I want to concentrate on my football career." So that's the story there that kind of came out yesterday evening. So he was caught by a random test when at Forest and served his ban, but it's FA policy to not name players who test positive for social drugs.
Except obviously someone leaked it somewhere along the way to get to the point where he's now talked to Danny Taylor in The Athletic. Look, I mean, I think footballers taking social drugs is probably quite a big issue. It's just that football doesn't seem to care that much about actual proper performance-enhancing drug taking, does it?
Well, we certainly don't see a lot of players failing tests for performance-enhancing drugs, and
that would suggest no one's doing it, Eoin.
Well,
right?
Yeah, that would suggest that footballers are different to people involved in athletics or cycling.
Yeah,
because they've got a better moral compass.
And people earn far less in those sports than they do in football. And
somehow that makes sense.
In football, you've got to go Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday over 45, 46, 60 games a season, and in some competitions, some divisions, and they're running faster and better and more able to control the ball in the 90th minute than they used to be.
And a global game.
It's
access
amazing.
to great doctors all around the world, I'm sure, have worked with some great teams.
Yeah.
But there have been some investigations, of course. But
But no one's ever been found guilty of nothing. Nobody important has ever been found guilty of anything. Right, so the Examiner, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. Bright future, GAA to introduce yellow smart ball for 2020 championship. That is Nasher on the front. He's saving it there, or like it's a puck out.
It's puck out. Oh.
Yeah, it's not a penalty. I mean, I do wonder how hard he was hitting those penalties, because he's pucking the ball in the air unless he's tapping it over the bar. And then McIlroy's mantra, no amount of money will change my drive to become the best in the world. Roy McIlroy's doing some end-of-season media. And, yeah, look. An interesting match preview ahead of the Leinster-Northampton Saints game. Robin McBride, the former Wales assistant coach who just joined to replace John Fogarty in the Leinster coaching setup. Former Wales Strongman of the Year.
Did not know that.
Yeah, that's according to Wikipedia. There's lots of other stuff on his Wikipedia page that isn't true. But Brendan O'Brien has this story from, I guess, the press conference this week, where, it has been quite a burden to me, to be honest. I've disappointed many a room when they hear Wales' strongest man, and then I walk in. That's not Wales' strongest man. Because you had Gary Taylor winning the world's strongest man around the same time. He was the strong man, obviously. It was like pulling tractors against, as opposed to just deadlifts and stuff like that. So, I wonder, could the farmers in the Leinster setup get a tractor to training someday and see who can pull it the furthest?
It's a good idea. It's a very good idea.
For charity, of course.
Ian Healy storming home with the win. I'm not going to read any more of Robin McBride's Wikipedia page, but one of the first sentences is, McBride was a baby at birth in Bangor. That's, of course, the first thing you see. And then you go down and I'm not sure if anything else there is fake, but Wales' Strongest Man competition in 1992.
That pit's true.
Is the Wikipedia page.
There's a few stories as well in the papers. Ruby Walsh has done a series of interviews around concussion and has said that he was knocked out 4 separate occasions as a jockey, and that it's one of those sports where it's not taken yet as seriously as it needs to be, or that the jockeys themselves are still camouflaging the fact that they've had the concussions. So obviously, it is taken very seriously by the medical profession, and the Turf Club have over the years tried as best they can to educate everybody about it. But he's saying, look, there would have been loads of times when I would have been like, no, I'm fine, I'm getting up, but I'm going to go racing tomorrow. So, again, you just hope that the jockeys themselves take it on to themselves to go, I'm going to have to sit tomorrow. Yeah,
I think in every aspect of the game, it just has to be one of the most lethal. Like, it's incredible what they do, and I'm not surprised to hear that at all from Ruby Walsh. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail goes into that Darryl Murphy story, former Ireland star, admits to taking cocaine. It's Freddie steady go. Oba and Co get Ljungberg off the mark, and Ireland boss may have to plan without Sexton. So Johnny Sexton has given Andy Farrell an early Six Nations scare, with Ireland's frontline out half set for a spell on the sidelines with a knee injury. The Irish Independent are actually going with the line that he is going to be out for the Six Nations.
For the start of the Six Nations, yeah. Big opportunity for Ross Byrne to get in that team.
With Joey Carberry out at the moment as well, yeah. This is like your chance. The shop window is very much open, and like a lot of people will say the start of a new World Cup cycle is when the coaches may take that chance as well. So it could be a happy marriage of things for someone like Ross Byrne to come in.
Lampard's warning, my youngsters must rise to the challenge at the front of Telegraph Sport this morning, and quick-fire Gunners, so 3 goals in 9 minutes to end a pressing run of defeats and leave Pellegrini on the brink at West Ham.
The Guardian this morning goes with Freddie and the Dreamers. Ljungberg's Arsenal turn on the style at London Stadium to pile more pressure on West Ham's manager Pellegrini. We will go for everything then. That is Jurgen Klopp speaking in Salzburg. Klopp demands no let-up for a match Liverpool dare not lose. And Barney Ornay says, poison dripping from our grand leaders finds its way to sport, in reference, of course, to Gary Neville's comments on Sky Sports at the weekend. And a devastating blow, Russia handed Olympic and World Cup ban, but critics demand stronger action. So, of course, Russia banned from sporting events for the next 4 years, sporting events except for the Euros, which St. Petersburg have a role in hosting.
We've got to start covering the big stories.
Yes.
Dancing on ice. There's Kevin Kilbarron's face. There, we're going to do it this way. Yeah, there you go. And it's actually really Maura Higgins Maura Higgins has hinted that she may be too busy with Dancing on Ice to watch the new series of Love Island. The Longford beauty came in fourth with boyfriend Curtis Pritchard in this year's series. ITV is airing 2 series of the show in 2020, using a new villa in South Africa this winter. And I hope to watch it. It's exciting. I've just been too busy with this. Probably if I get time, but I hope to last a long time in this. This is Dancing on Ice. Meanwhile, Dancing on Ice's first ever same-sex couple are struggling with their lifts because their nether regions keep getting in the way. I mean, I don't believe this. I think this is just an excuse for Rowan Smith to write that. But anyway, and then other stars in the show, include former Republic of Ireland footballer Kevin Kilbane and telly icon Michael Barrymore.
Looking at digitalspy.com, revealing all the contestants, Kevin Kilbane's description: the former footballer retired from the sport in 2012 and now he's set to try his hand at some skating. Kilbane is also well known as a TV pundit and has worked on a number of shows, including Match of the Day, Full Stop. Where is the off-the-ball reference, Digital Spy, is what I want to know.
We should get on to them. You're a YouTuber. You could tell them what to do, right?
You can.
You've got power in the internet.
Seemingly, you know what you're doing, Digital Spy. It's totally there's this lad, Perry Kiley, who's taking part in it, who was one of the 12 members of Diversity, who won Britain's Got Talent years ago. A member of a dance group in a celebrity dancing show. Granted,
do you think they have a bit of an advantage?
This guy could be spinning on his head on the ice. Like, Kevin doesn't stand a chance against this
but is it not a public vote? Will it not be like Kev's winning smile that they're...
You'd be surprised how the public become extreme ice skating aficionados over the course of a series like this. Kevin Kilbane's legendary wit can only get him so far in this. He's got to be a good ice skater.
He's just lucky it's not on during November, where he would be like not wearing a poppy and kicked out in the first week. Irish Daily Star, Life or Debt. And this is an FAI story at DEBT for those of you who are listening on the radio. Life or Debt. Ex-FAI General Secretary Brendan Menton wants the FAI to join forces with the government, FIFA and UEFA to rescue Irish football. Menton is obviously retired from the game, having worked for the FAI and FIFA for almost 2 decades, after obviously previously serving the association as an officer. He was the CEO of the FAI around Saipan. Yesterday warned that the FAI's long-term financial liabilities could soar towards 100 million. Now, I don't know where he's getting the figures from, but certainly that would be a huge amount of debt for any organisation the size of the FAI to be saddled with, and it will be very interesting to see what the response is going to be like from the various bodies. He says, doing it before the appointment of the new independent directors and the new CEO, I would question that also, he says. The FAI needs to involve all stakeholders in this, as I don't think it has the capacity to do it themselves. So they need to get the sponsors on board, the government on board, and FIFA and UEFA. Can you grow the income? Yes, you can, but only by a few million euros per year. That's not going to solve the problem. For me, the key question is, where is the FAI going to source the cash to continue its operations? That's especially as they forecast continuing losses in the coming years, and it also brought forward somewhere in the region of 24 million in income from the future to meet previous liabilities and obligations. Okay, so that's where he's getting his 100 million figure from. If you consider that the figure for last year's accounts was that they lost 9 million, what's the figure going to be for this year? It's probably not going to be a good figure, considering that they have fairly massive legal costs. And then what's the figure going to be for next year? And then they've already brought forward income from future TV deals to pay debt down or to keep the show on the road. And that income's not going to happen now in the future because you've already taken it. It's like, right, you've got an advance. So now the payday loan is effectively being cashed in. And they don't come at good rates. So we'll see.
That stadium sale is all of a sudden looking like not only something that they might be advised to do, but something that they might have to do, because there's only a finite amount of resources, like especially if you don't qualify for Euro 2020, which is almost this unnecessary pressure. Definitely there's unnecessary pressure on the team, where it's like our entire organisation is completely screwed financially, and you can actually make us a few quid if you go out and win 2 games in a row.
So Shane Ross was obviously out yesterday speaking with Virgin Media News. We don't trust them with the money. Here he is talking about withholding the money from the FAI. We've got a bit of audio from this. Let's hear him.
We always have to deal with all the chief executive officers that we come across, and I've always found that it's been easy enough to deal with all of them as long as they're running a reasonably good show. I hope there are no other people acting in the way that we. Of course, nobody knew what was going on, and we were all rejoicing in the success of the Irish team. And the success of Irish football. A lot of us didn't know what was going on at all behind the scenes, and of course that's unacceptable. So, yeah, I think it's we've got to be very, very vigilant in future, and that's what we intend to be.
Yeah, it's good to be vigilant in the future. It would have been reasonable to be vigilant in the past, though, as well. We were all rejoicing. What was that story about him getting tickets for Wayside Celtic? Was it Wayside Celtic? It was about 200 or 300 tickets for Wayside Celtic that Shane Ross got for one of the friendlies. Just like, was he really that busy rejoicing in the success of the football team, or was he not paying enough attention to what was going on? Because that's the other thing here, like... politicians want to use sport as their little plaything that they can rejoice in and that they can get money for pet projects. But when it comes to actually holding sport to account and holding the sports bodies to account, far less of that seems to be happening. So what was Shane Ross doing while all this was happening? What were previous ministers for sport doing while all this was happening? Remember, the Taoiseach was Minister for Sport while John Delaney was the FAI CEO as well. So they all have questions to answer. So here he is talking about UEFA funding.
UEFA would recognise the fact that we are worried about government funding. We've got a duty to the taxpayer. We're not going to interfere with their internal affairs, with their operations, their day-to-day operations or anything like that. No. But we must be absolutely certain that we don't give money to an organisation which is in tatters. And the FAI is, and I think everybody would agree, it's a basket case, it's a financial basket case. The extent of the debt we don't even know. And we're not going to put government funds or taxpayers' money into that. And I'm not a bit concerned about having a conflict with FIFA or the UEFA over that, because I think they'd share our concern, having seen the figures. And how the FAI runs its internal affairs, and it's been really, really badly, will be a matter, I suppose. It will continue to be a matter, not for us, but for others. But how taxpayers' money is spent is a matter for us, and how it's managed is a matter for us, and how the governance of an NGB like this works is a matter for us, and we're not going to give taxpayers' money to them unless it works properly.
I know we've spoken about this interview before, but his News Talk interview after Stephen Kenny was appointed are still just incredible quotes in the context of how strong he is on those who are inside the FAI tent for so long. Just saying, on John Delaney, I don't hear people giving out. I read about it in the press, all right. There's a lot of criticism about John Delaney. My own experience is that when I go to these local games in the constituency on the ground, is that I see John Delaney and representatives of the FAI all the time. They're always on the ground doing things relating to those really important things that young people are doing. And I don't know, I just think that there's a situation here where if you're going to criticise people for not seeing what was going on, even though you're probably right in that criticism, there's also probably a bit of self-reflection that needs to be done as well.
The English rugby coaching job is kind of part of the discussion in English rugby at the minute. On the face of it, rugby coaching in England is a pretty pathetic state, isn't it? The national team is run by foreign coaches. Where's the English coaching talent gone? And then this is Owen Slott's piece, just an interesting one, that they're going to end up talking about who should the next England coach be. And I do wonder who's going to be in the running for that, and whether or not Joe Schmidt ultimately might end up coaching England, and he'd be pretty good at it. Lifeline for Lundberg is the back page of the Times. May faces pay cut at Tigers. Johnny May could have to accept a pay cut if he's to remain at Leicester Tigers next season, as the struggling Gallagher Premiership club aim to free up money to rebuild their squad. Now, it would be very interesting to see if Johnny May would take a pay cut, considering he's, very good and loads of money sloshing around English rugby. Maybe he could get his own coffee shop.
It would be a very good idea. There's nothing wrong with selling coffee, sure. Everybody needs a bit of caffeine.
It's a growth industry.
Back page of the Mirror is Pepe Le Pew, £72 million man, finally comes good to help Gunners to their first win in 10 games. October the 6th, the last time they won a match. And biggest sports scandal ever. This is the quote from Linda Hayand, who is WADA Vice President. Russia out in the cold as WADA hammer them over falsifying data in drug cover-up.
So the back page of the Herald, Klopp, let's do it again. Liverpool seek domestic and European double, and fears that Sexton will miss the Six Nations. That's Cian Tracy's story. So it looks like he's going to miss the start of the Six Nations anyway, and the full extent of the problem has yet to be determined, I think. The ITAF underwent an initial scan on Sunday, and after it failed to determine the full extent of the problem, he was sent to see a specialist yesterday for further examination. So, yeah, not great.
That is the lead on the back of the Irish Independent. Knee injury to Rúil Sexton out for start of Six Nations. Some fears that it could be ligament damage. Gunners get Pepe back in their step. There is Nicholas Pepe celebrating Arsenal's winner last night. Hurling's new ball game as Slitter turns yellow. And Davy Fitz to plan without all-star duo. That is the headline here about Leachin and Matthew O'Hanlon set to miss the opening rounds of the National League. The Davy Fitz story was interesting to me. He's been speaking about his decision to go back to the helm at Wexford this year because he came very, very close. Like he said, I said to Derek, who was involved with the county board, I presume, I'll meet you Wednesday or Thursday. And on Wednesday at the last second, I changed my mind because he was going to walk away. And that's fact. On the Wednesday, I changed my mind. I got a call from one person and I got a text from a journalist giving me a load of reasons why I should stay in Wexford. The journalist, who I'd never met before and was chiefly into writing on other sports, he gave me a message that was unreal. I went home to Sharon and I said to her, I can't go. I wonder who that journalist is. And then he says, it wasn't sitting with me right that I could leave.
Somebody who writes about other sports.
Yeah. So the great
rugby or soccer writers, or horse racing writer or
boxing writer, who knows. If you saw the texts I got from the players, I've kept every one of them, and I think there were 29 texts. They were sent over a 2 or 3 week period.
30-man panel. I'd hate to be the one who didn't send it. Oh, you're getting cut, buddy.
If I get away with never deleting them, I'd like to hold on to them. So there's always an off-season story with Davy about players trying to persuade him to come back. Although they didn't hire a minibus to go to 6 Mile Bridge this time, so
they didn't need to. The power of the text message, and I wonder who sent the. Is it a written journalist? Is it a broadcaster?
Do you know I'm not known for being a hurling journalist?
No,
me.
It could be. You're a rugby man now. The Racing Post, big controversy brewing in Irish racing at the moment. Racing TV selling the sport short in Ireland. This is Noel Meade. Noel Meade has labelled Racing TV a disaster, believes the jam-packed schedule is not doing the channel's presenters or analysts justice, especially in Ireland. The leading trainer, who's chairman of the Irish Racehorse Trainers Association, believes Racing TV cannot cater for Irish racing properly in its current format and is calling for the issue to be addressed. On Sunday, the Grade 1 John Durkin Memorial Chase at Punchestown was broadcast on a split screen with no commentary in the early parts of the race as a result of an unscheduled clash with the Peterborough Chase from Huntington. Since Irish Racing switched to Racing TV after Racecourse Media Group acquired the rights in a deal that began on the 1st of January, split-screen coverage is an issue that has been exacerbated due to the volume of tracks now on Racing TV's roster, and Noel Meade, amongst a number of voices, not happy with it. Racing TV has been a disaster. There's no other way to put it. It could never have been anything else with that much racing on one channel. We've got Ass as well. La Hora de Jovic. The Hour of Jovic. That's what Tommy says, it's the spotlight, but I mean,
I'm sure Graham Hunter will be able to tell us a bit more.
La Hora de Jovic. Graham Hunter, good morning to you.
Yeah, what's this? I'm sure Graham Hunter will. I'm never like that as an intro line, on it.
La Hora...
What are you into now?
The translation of the front cover of Ask this morning, La Hora de Jovic. The Hour of Jovic?
Yeah. Well, you both followed Jovic, I guess, during the Europa League and his exploits last season at Eintracht. And I can't remember if I said to you lads, and you may well know, but last, where are we now? Tuesday. So say last Thursday, Real Madrid's players had their Christmas dinner out, and it wasn't a raucous affair and blah, 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 but there was a Secret Santa. And I give you the tone in that they gave Gareth Bale Golf Club. Obviously, they did. They should have brought him a caddy or something along those lines, or I don't know, or Lawrence Dunnigan's 7 iron in the soul. But they gave Jovic a dictionary, which it isn't only verbally that he's a little bit lost. What they're suggesting clearly is that having, gone through already, suffered against Bruges, boy oh boy, those 45 minutes of the first half of Bruges at the Bernabeu were stunning, with your man Tau from Brighton running left, right and centre. Now, Jovic needs confidence, Jovic needs game time. They can afford to play him. Although he bears no resemblance to Benzema positionally, the guy who replaces Benzema, who's playing just about, I think he's played every minute of the Champions League and about 95% of his minutes available in the league. He's playing just deliriously good football in terms not just of goals, but assists and leadership. He is somebody who's loved assuming the mantle of, listen, this is what happens up front, fellas. I'm in charge since Cristiano went. But he's got Valencia away at the weekend and then Barcelona at the Camp Nou next Wednesday. So there's a really logical thing to do that he's replaced. And if it's Jovic, then it's overdue that this kid who is suffering in football terms because he was the target man at Eintracht Frankfurt. Even when he was playing with Haller, the ball was aimed at Jovic. He was given service that he swept up, and it came from left and right high, where what Madrid right now do is play sort of like constructed football around the penalty area. It's all very give and go, tippy-tappy, and Benzema is the man, and Jovic has looked, he's got, what has he got? 1 goal so far competitively, and he's looked uncomfortable. They say that in training his spirit is good, that he's a big unit who is beginning to learn nuances to his game, but it's taking him time, and therefore, yeah, let's see if we see him in Belgium.
Yeah, okay. Can we talk a little bit about Pep? Because there was stories in The Athletic over the last month or so where details about Pep's life have begun to just build a little bit of a picture. His wife has apparently moved back to Barcelona. She's heavily involved in the management of his career. The new performance director role at Manchester City has been advertised, and apparently some candidates have been informed that this may be the last season of Pep's time at Manchester City. Part of that seems like it might just be a conversation that you have with somebody for an eventuality, as opposed to this is definitely the end of the Pep era. But Pep might not stay that much longer at Manchester City. That's a realistic possibility as well.
Yeah, look, first of all, his wife being in Barcelona, I don't think is in any way indicative of a definite move by Pep Guardiola that he's going to leave. She is a very independent woman. She is a businesswoman. She comes from a dynasty of a very wealthy fashion manufacturing family. It's a very short distance between Catalonia and Manchester in terms of private jets and so on and so forth. So them all being together is not a desperate problem. I've looked at Pep recently, Ger, and seen him looking tired. And I know that after the, what do you call it down there, Carabao Cup, League Cup?
Yeah.
Last year when it went to penalties, I'm certain, them having beaten Chelsea by 6 a couple of weeks earlier. I know that the following morning he was exhausted, and the first time in years was like dragging himself to work. And, you know, you can see the frustration with the situation that he's been left with, in that for whatever reason, the planning wasn't adequate to take account of sod's law, like injuries in the areas you can least afford them will happen. It's just sod's law, particularly in football, not just in real life. And therefore, I accept that it's well within his compass to say, yeah, this is it, my year. The things I've got in count, and I don't know what he's going to do, and what I would counsel, I haven't seen how the Athletic have termed it, Jaron, and you were very careful in not saying this is it, they're saying he's out and all that kind of stuff. He's a quixotic man. That needs to be understood. Although he has very clear and firm ideas and principles about what he wants to achieve, he is quixotic. And if Manchester City become uncompetitive and domestically, and what's the gap now? 14, I think, on top place, not on Leicester. That will cost him. And gearing up to say, I will turn this around again, I will rebuild. I don't think, in my opinion, he's ever aspired to be an Alec Ferguson. Never mind a quarter of a century at one place. I do not believe that he aspires to be in one place 10 years. I really don't see that. How will I phrase this best, Ger? I fundamentally believe that Pep has been laying down, not clues for us, but telling the truth. When he talks about the Champions League and he talks about needing the atmosphere at Manchester City amongst the media, the fans, the executives, the players, as a must-win, that they live and breathe, that you almost create the pressure that exists, that you both know this, exists at Bayern Munich, now at Paris Saint-Germain, definitely at Real Madrid, at Manchester United for as long as Ferguson was there, at Barcelona, at Juventus, win the Champions League, dominate Europe. When he has said, and he has said it time and time again, and occasionally he's been mocked for it, oh, it's the fans' fault we're not winning the Champions League is the headline afterwards. I mean, idiots. Just grow up. That's reporting like that is why we're going to get the half-wit government that we're going to get in the United Kingdom. He wants to work in an environment where everybody, even peripherally associated with the club, is obsessed day by day with the demands of winning in Europe. That's what will make him react best. That's what he wants to see as a legacy at City. He wants to win the Champions League at City. And if he sees a club that is unwilling to make that switch, that is unwilling or unable at the moment because they've lived so long in United's shadow and Liverpool's shadow, and that they're desperate, that the fans, that everybody associated with the sponsors, the local environment as well is like dominating England, beat United, blah, 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 and he can't make that change, then I could understand him coming short of his contract, which again, I'm sorry, if I'm not wrong, he's got a year this summer, right? One more year?
I think so,
Does that sound right? Or two?
Yeah.
But when he says that he wants to complete his contract, again, normally, that's the truth. You get an awful lot of truth from Pep Guardiola when he answers questions. It's the norm that he will tell you what's either fact or on his mind then. And therefore, I genuinely don't believe that anybody knows that this will actually be Pep's final season. In the conditions I've outlined, just outright fatigue or an understanding that he has a different ideology about how City must play and perform in Europe, then I could understand him curtailing his time at City. But right now, I still think that his intention is to complete his contract.
What's his intention for his career overall, Graham? Because it kind of makes sense to get around to different countries, try and win the Champions League in as many different places as possible. But that sense of kind of conquest around Europe is probably, I'd imagine, wearing thin a little bit at the moment. In your opinion, what's his overall career ambition after the age of 50? He's 48 now.
Opinion aside, I know, as a matter of fact, that it's decidedly one of his dreams to coach Brazil to a World Cup win. And you can understand why. He's extraordinarily attracted to the greats of history. And I've said this before, so I'll say it now. When he went to Bayern Munich at first, his expectation was that his next club would be Manchester United. He literally could not believe that Ed Woodward made next to no overtures to get him at any stage. That the fact that Alex Ferguson had knowingly sent Martin Ferguson over to Barcelona to say, will you come and be the next manager of Manchester United rather than Mourinho taking over? This is way back when he's at Barcelona. Let's get the timeline correct. And City has been an enormous success, and I think it's been pretty revolutionary for English football, not just Manchester City. And I genuinely believe that the impact of Pep on English football will be a stone in the pond that leaves ripples for some time after he's gone, whether he goes this summer, one summer, and 2 summers' times, in my opinion. But United has a different history, a different tradition. It attracted Pep differently, and that's where he expected and wanted to be. And I apply the same criterion to Brazil. That criterion is he wants to be part of history. He wants to take his slice of something that is romantic and beautiful in the history of international football and that allured him while he was growing up. Whether he achieves that, my point about raising Manchester United is that he wants to be part of the historic infrastructure of the greats of club and international football. But just like Figo always said that he wanted to play for Manchester United but might not get the chance, Pep wanted to go coach United, now probably won't. I say probably won't. But Brazil is definitely one of the things he wants to achieve on for 100% certain. Whether he gets that dream or not, it's part of the fun of the fair, isn't it?
Yeah. I just wanted to move on because we've been talking a bit about Mourinho the last time you were on. Obviously, since then he's fetched up at Spurs, and it looks to have settled in quite well. How much of the new Jose Mourinho persona are you buying?
Hello, have you told him that you think he fetched up? It's a brilliant expression, but I don't think Mourinho thinks he fetches up anywhere. He's a master of tactics and strategy, Terry. He doesn't fetch up. Listen, so far, I don't take back my prediction to both of you. I'm certain it was you together on the show when I said it's to Spurs' great benefit that he's being filmed all the time, or almost all the time. I think we're seeing the cat that got the cream. Clearly his ideas about how to speak to the players every day, who to pick, and simply the positive backwash of it not being same old Poch anymore has been really invigorating for us outside to watch. Spurs are fun to watch. Each of the players seems to have rediscovered a yard and a half of pace and of intention. But the Mourinho thing, I think he's loving the facilities. He believes still, and I think always has done, that he's the best. When you're the best, you want to go to work every day in a place that reflects what you think of yourself, and Spurs training ground does that to you. It's absolutely off the scale elite. The stadium, obviously the same, and I think that he feels, this is right, this is proper. But being on camera as well, I said to you, I thought it was good. I think it's wonderful for him. The players, the staff, they're getting the very best Mourinho, somebody who's thinking really hard about what his persona looks and feels like, how it will come across in the film. I really sound like a bad man saying all this, but I'm saying it, one, of, I think, accuracy, and two, I think it's positive. You said, how much am I buying? So is there a dark, dastardly sort of pantomime, top-hatted, mustachioed Mourinho waiting to burst out any second now? Well, not for so long as it's going like it is just now.
The thing that interests me the most is that there's a certain core group of players that may not play football the way that Jose Mourinho wanted his Man United team to play, or his Chelsea, the second time round team, to play. And that because these players are good footballers, now, a couple of transfer windows might ruin this, but that actually they're so gung-ho and sometimes in how they play that it's the anti-Mourinho type football, and that maybe this group of players might free him from his own tactical shackles.
Yeah, but listen, as much as you can genuinely look at Jose Mourinho now and say he looks 8-9 years younger than he did. He definitely looks trimmer. He looks happier. He's funny again. And if you take that comparison with the Mourinho we saw in his last stages at Chelsea and throughout his United time, then you can also say, well, okay, if you want to jump back to not as far as Chelsea, but when Inter were on the front foot, they really played. All right, when they had to defend, fine, but his Inter was extremely exciting. His Real Madrid title-winning side, before he decided that the only way to trip Pep Guardiola's Barcelona up was to provoke them and to defend and to press gang them. In the title season, when he let them loose at Real Madrid, they were playing the brand of football you're seeing now at Spurs. I'd argue that there's not a huge lack of correlation between the Inter-treble performance and Spurs' attitude in the pitch, which is what you're talking about. Yes, Inter, Mourinho had the chance to tinker in the transfer market and put in personalities that he liked. But it's not out with the playbook of Jose Mourinho that his teams play like Spurs are playing right now. Like you, do I think that there will be specific additions of savvy, height, power, and probably extra goals coming as soon as he gets hold of the checkbook? Yes, I agree, Ger. I'd only point out that generally the Spurs side that we're seeing right now isn't a million miles from the happiest Mourinho teams.
You're covering Inter Barca, is that right?
Yep.
What do you expect from this? Because Inter have been really good in this competition so far.
Yeah, big chance for Inter, eh? No Messi. I think although Suarez has travelled, I think it's a toss of a coin for me. And Ernesto Valverde may well know, may have his team in his mind, but you might get, I think Suarez probably plays, but you might get Griezmann, Ansu Fati and Carlos Perez up front. There's a strong likelihood that Busquets can sit on the bench. I very much doubt De Jong plays. Neto does play in goals for making his full competitive debut for Barca. Wildly changed, probably Wage at right back, Junior, who's playing, stinking football at the moment, at left back. So, Barcelona will have to go out there and compete their socks off, even though it's going to be a much less recognisable 11, because qualifications at play here. And, the amounts of money for a win, it's 2.7 million euros for a win. The Dortmund host, whoever's left, or Dortmund are playing Slavia Prague, who I've loved. I will hate going out bottom of the group, in order to joust for the last 16. And therefore, for the honour of the competition, I expect Barcelona to really push at Inter tonight. And it'll be an odd-looking team. And if Conte's got his pressing game as mean and nasty as he tends to. I saw they only drew 0-0 at the weekend, but Lukaku should be able to bully whatever stand-in footballers are at the back for Football Club Barcelona. In all honesty, given Barcelona's recent record on the road in Europe, I would have thought this is a right good chance for Inter to win and go through. I know you're not asking me for a punt, but I'll be watching and reporting on this with really interested eyes to see what kind of spirit and character not a skeleton 11, but a wildly different 11 can produce on the road in San Siro.
Graham, like you mentioned Junior there. I was listening to you on Premier Sports at the Wanda a couple of, it was about 10 days ago at this point.
Condolences. Sorry about that. Then.
But you're making an interesting point. You were, like, yourself and the two other people broadcasting with you, kind of urging Junior on throughout the match, because there was almost a sense around him that he has a talent, but he's almost afraid of making a mistake at every available opportunity. Like, is that an issue that every young player faces coming into Barcelona, and not just young players? Is it perhaps a reason why Antoine Griezmann perhaps stuttered in his early couple of games with Barcelona, that there's almost a click you have to get into on the pitch?
I take your point on. I mean, listen, it is a daunting place. And the way it's been explained to me over and over again is that training's a daunting place. Leave the Camp Nou out of it. It's a no mistakes. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do what we can all do? How many times are you going to do that? Until you settle, until you prove yourself, there is although there is a support network and the players will try to reach out and help new players. You're right, not just young players. And there will be a level of patience shown overall on a day-to-day basis. It's a harsh environment. And you're surrounded by not just elite technical footballers, but winners, hard-nosed guys. And yeah, it's a tough study. But Junior is slightly different from Griezmann. Griezmann knows all about that. Griezmann signed up for that. And is probably I would say, I sat down and interviewed him for 45 minutes a couple of weeks ago. And I think he understood that he's overthinking it, that he's trying too hard to do things not only that are Barca systematic, he's trying to do things that he thinks will please Suarez and Messi on the pitch. Whereas he's been bought for, what he's good at, and he needs to establish that first and then start serving the other two. Because if he's scoring, then the ball will be given to him, whatever. So I think in the last 2-3 games, Griezmann has adjusted that. And you're right, I liked what you described it as a slight stutter. I think he's got 5 goals across all his games and maybe 4 assists, but his work rate is very good. Until now, it's a success. He said that when he first moved from La Real to Atleti, it took him until December to even understand what was going on. And then start of the second season, he felt like a new man, like he fitted. Hopefully it doesn't take that long for him at Barca, but Junior's a different case. Junior is a guy who didn't have a massive amount of experience at Betis, who Barca picked up late in the market. He wasn't a first choice. He is a good athlete. He's European under-21 champion with Spain. He got a brutal injury last season that kept him out for too long, stunted his development. He hasn't been well taught yet. And at Football Club Barcelona, his positional sense is all wrong. In the game you're talking about against Atleti, he clipped that one off his own post, leaving Stegen lost, and he gave away a free kick and just at the edge outside the edge of their own penalty box. And from that point onwards, his buttocks clenched. The world was ready to fall out of his backside, and he was going, I'm not making a mistake. And by playing like that, you take away all the good side of your game. And if you look at the weekend, 5-2 against Mallorca, the second goal that Mallorca score, Junior is wildly out of position. He hasn't read where he should be. He tries to compensate, gets caught out. And at the moment, he's a frightened rabbit. And you don't have long like that at Barca. Oh, and you really don't. But I think they're two separate cases.
Graham, we'll leave it there for today. Enjoy the weekend, or this week's games. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts ahead of this week's match day in the Champions League. It's 8:27 a.m. this morning. You're watching OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. We're going to be back with our search for the Irish sports moment of the decade next on OTB AM.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. OTB Gold, the very best of Off the Ball.
Are you crazy?
This is OTB Sports Radio. This week on OTB Gold.
Jack McCaffrey, you're very welcome. You just warned me, no boring questions.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
You may say, why is he always talking about whites and blacks? Because everything happened to me is racial. It's all based on race and religion.
I felt really, really empowered by running.
I was never as heavy as I was. I was 10 stone 11. And to lose that 7 pounds was torture.
But I never even wanted to see those people. You know, I went into isolation for many years.
OTB Gold, the very best of Off the Ball. Weekdays from 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. This is OTB Sports Radio.
From true crime believers to science and business achievers, sports, arts and comedy to the latest entertainment wannabe. Get political, get healthy, get educated. Get all your favourite podcasts on Go Loud. Download the Go Loud app now or add us on your smart speaker. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio and music to your ears.
OTB AM.
Olympic champion, I've dreamed of this moment so many times before.
Yeah, it's time for us to pick the best sporting moments of the last decade. Today we have quite the lineup. This is the last round of 16 that we have. Two more. Penultimate round of last 16 we have. So here's the draw so far. It is Shane Long and the O'Donovan brothers are through. Shane Lowry and the Le Drop from Johnny Sexton are through on one side. It's Robbie Brady and Lar, Tip 2010, the hat-trick, beat Dean Rock and the Dubs. Didn't mobilise the Dubs fans enough. So today we have Katie Taylor versus Leinster winning the Heineken Cup in 2011.
Yeah, Katie Taylor. May as well stop the segment now. Like Leinster don't stand a prayer in this department.
Well, let's have a look. Here's Leinster.
Choice. Keith, you are right. They have to stand up now. Now is the time for them to rise to the occasion.
Well, Joe Schmidt gets paid a lot of money to coach Leinster. Since his arrival in Leinster, he's done an absolutely wonderful job. But what a conundrum he has at his disposal now, because at half-time in the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, live on News Talk Sports Saturday, Leinster trail Northampton by 22 points to 6.
Leinster throwing everything they've got here at Northampton to get this first score of the second half, which they do. Johnny Sexton, they're back in the game.
Sean O'Brien looking for his third try in the Heineken Cup this season. One of the Leinster players is over, and Roman Plot is awarded the try. It's a fifth try this afternoon. It's a third for Leinster, and this Heineken Cup final has been ripped open by the team looking for their second title in 3 years.
The world, I can tell you, this is one of the most extraordinary games of rugby. Delighted you're all listening.
All Leinster need to do is grab the ball, stick it into the stands, and they'll be kings of Europe for the second time. Madigan is doing exactly that, and he leaps into the air, and Leinster are the Heineken Cup champions for 2011 after arguably one of the greatest final comebacks ever seen on a rugby field.
I mean, it is one of the greatest final comebacks ever seen. Mm-hmm. And kind of in any sport. They were getting absolutely hammered.
They were like, of course, it was great on its own, but then there is this.
They're up against Katie Taylor.
the culmination of a lifetime of work. She learned the tenets of the noble art by copying her father.
Yeah, so let's have a look at some of the headlines from Katie Taylor. Obviously, the case for her is the gold medal in 2012, the emotion of winning in London, darling of the public, and then obviously, I mean, it's not really about the whole decade, but she has had a fairly stellar professional career as well. So fairly straightforward from Kevin Mitchell at the Excel Arena. Katie Taylor wins Ireland's first gold medal of London 2012 Olympics. You know, maybe they thought that we were going to win loads more, but anyway, it's gold. World beater Katie Taylor triumphs in London. This is Cliona Foley's story in The Independent. Striking a blow for Ireland, the New York Times. Katie Taylor pictured leaping into the air by Barry Birek from the Olympics, the lightweight final, women's boxing. It's the New York Times. That's it, I think, is it? Yeah. For the Irish, Katie Taylor is more than a great athlete sprung from the native soil. People speak of her as if she has sprung from themselves, for she seems everyone's sister, their daughter, their friend. That was the piece from the New York Times. Houston Station, on the big screen. Princess Anne shielding her ears from the noise of the boxing taken by Dara O'Brien. I never saw that, actually. All of Ireland raise a pint for Katie Taylor's gold medal, Russian beatdown, Samuel L. Jackson.
And that should be the clincher right there.
Yeah, so obviously Katie Taylor managed to transcend the sport of boxing.
Well, exactly. And they had everybody in the country on their tiptoes, if you were standing, of course, in Houston, watching it at that point, because the nature of the fight was fairly interesting as well.
Nature of the fight? Did she win the fight? No, we're okay now, 8 years on to go, 7 years on. Did she actually win the fight? I'm not sure.
Well, I was watching it on television, and the commentator certainly persuaded me that it was.
Yeah.
I was young and impressionable back
Is this
then.
one of those times where the fix is in on your behalf, and you're like, yeah, that's not that corrupt, really?
The London Olympics were probably the last Olympic Games.
Corrupt on our behalf, we don't mind.
Where I had kind of the pure worldview of sport. But I don't know, I think...
When did you start working here?
It was later than that. But perhaps... she actually did win the fight. I would need to watch back and just kind of... it definitely wasn't a robbery, but it was definitely the closest she came to losing, without a shadow of a doubt, during that entire run. And I don't know, it's not really about that. It's about everything else that came with the moment, the hype that she had to carry right into it, the person who played such a role in getting women's boxing into the Olympic Games. And then the pressure she carried, being kind of unbeaten for so long in her own division, and being clearly the leader in that department, and the Olympics being so close to home, a lot of Irish there, as we saw, and the worldwide coverage it got. It did transcend sport for a brief moment, and I think it's nonsense to say that sport transcends itself quite often, because that's often not the case. But on this occasion, I think, for a while anyway, it was this incredible moment for everybody in Ireland, and for a lot of sports lovers around the world as well. So I just think that this is going to go all the way, and I think it's going to win the entire moment of the decade.
Well, I mean, don't ruin the whole next 3 weeks of this segment, Eoin, but way to go. Way to forward sell. The case for Leinster's comeback, let's make that. 2011 Heineken Cup final against Northampton. Best game of the decade, perhaps. Right up there. It's 33-22 is the final score. Look at Sexton at the end of it. Look how skinny and scrawny and young he is there. Istanbul-esque. Famously, Sexton makes a speech at halftime, reminding everybody about Istanbul, and this could be their moment to do that. While over in one corner, the forwards are looking at, particularly the front row, are looking at video of why the scrum fell apart. A multitude of things happened in that dressing room at halftime that changed things around. It obviously launches the decade of Johnny Sexton. Probably our best ever provincial team in terms of the actual quality players that they had in the pitch.
Yeah, I like.
Maybe you can make the case that
2018.
An individual team, maybe the one with Rocky Elsom is better, but maybe not, because that's got Sean O'Brien at this one.
What's the Rocky Elsom 2012, is it?
09.
09, sorry.
You only had one season.
Yeah. Yeah, that is probably a tad better, and the 2018 one's just a little wrong below that. So, no, it is a great moment. If you're ranking the rugby moments of the decade, though, it's not even number one. Like, I think that we've been through this. I think,
but it's not. We don't need to rank it.
I know we don't, but like I know we don't. But for it to beat Katie Taylor winning a gold medal in boxing for Ireland for the first time in 20 years, getting a gold medal in that sport, like I just think that it's insurmountable in this particular head-to-head. Now the thing is, if there's going to be one chance of a massive upset in this tournament, it could be this. It just could be this, given Leinster rugby fans who will have travelled to the game, will have been there, and it will have been the happiest moment of their entire decade, because there is nothing like a sporting comeback.
If you put this up against the ghost goal, like, I mean, this is an amazing sporting moment.
But this would beat the ghost goal.
This would beat most things.
It's the national element is what's going to win this for Katie Taylor.
Voting is live.
Democracy.
You get to make your own mind up. Round of 16 clash. Katie Taylor's goal versus Leinster's 2011 comeback. Does the top one always win, Tommy? Is that how you've fixed this in the first round there with your like little marionette puppet master fixing all the votes? Anyway, you can have your say as we crown Ireland's sporting moment of the last decade. So last night, UCD professor Paul Rouse spoke about the magnitude of the challenges facing the FAI. Have a look.
So I'd be sanguine enough about government involvement to sort this out. They seem to have enough challenges of their own in this. But it's quite clear. I think I'll make 3 points on it.
Go on.
The first two are interrelated. The FAI needs money and people. It needs to find new money. It needs to park its debt in a large way. But most of all, fundamentally, it needs to make the right appointments. If you make the right appointments to manage what's happening at the moment, and what's there isn't enough, and it's not one appointment.
Who makes them, by the way?
It's a series. Well, ultimately, it's made by the board and the AGM. The AGM elects its officers, and after that,
the board have to go, surely. En masse.
The old board is essentially going en masse, but it's what goes. But this is a question. There are some people who are going to have to stay. It might hurt a little bit, but there are people who are some way involved who are going to have to say, because you need some sort of corporate knowledge of what's happening. It's very easy to say, oh, let's get rid of everybody, but you have to retain some level there. So it's money, it's sort out the money thing, but first of all, it's people. But the point you make there is an essential point. There is a broader love for soccer, a presence. It's like to a cliched point, the global game. There is huge wealth in soccer, and there is huge earning capacity, because of the fact that it's a global game, because of the TV money that is around the place, because of the broad base in membership. And I think the point is really well made by that if you sort out the structure and you get the right people in place, then you could get a lift really quick.
Yeah, Paul Rice always, when he talks like that, he's got the weight of history behind him and understands exactly how sport in Ireland has evolved and gone off the rails over the last century and a half. So maybe they could do worse than actually getting him somewhere involved. Anne-Marie, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Morning.
What have we got for us this morning?
We'll start with Arsenal, and they finally got back to winning ways last night at the London Stadium. A 3-1 victory over West Ham. 3 second-half goals in just 9 minutes from Martinelli, Nicolas Pepe and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang saw them come away with 3 points. The result is Freddie Ljungberg's first win as interim head coach. It sends them back into the top half of the table. They go 9th with it. Ljungberg was delighted for his players, and he said at afterwards that they've been under immense pressure of late.
They believed in how we want to play football, and I could feel there around 60 minutes, like West Ham getting tired, our passing, we're getting a bit crisper, a bit faster. All of a sudden, we sliced them open, and the boys did amazing.
Did you go to bed at half-time?
I went to bed for the entire thing, to be honest with you.
You've given
Slept.
up.
I went and hibernated last night. Just packed it in.
He had a big weekend. That's his.
I packed it in early. But to be fair, I kind of like was waking up mid-slumber, and I was like, 1-0 down. Another one, relegation battle. But now top 4 is back on.
A lot of relegation battle tweets.
Because that was the narrative before the game, to use that phrase, because Everton's win at the weekend. Just going to bring up the Premier League table here. Like, they were coming perilously close. I don't think Arsenal had ever been, through all the bad years, I don't think the R word had been used.
It's never been that close, yeah.
Yeah, like it had been used about Liverpool, like briefly, during Roy Hodgson era, I want to say. For a very brief amount of time. It's only this time of the year when you've stuck with the wrong manager for a little bit too long. So Arsenal are 22 now. If they'd lost last night, it would have been on 19, which would have been 4 points above the relegation zone, and that would have been your angle this morning. Whereas now, I'm sure you're going to come up with this, that, only 7 points outside of the Champions League places against a flaky Chelsea. It's back on, very much so. Give it Freddie till the end of the season. is the most unoriginal tweet you'll see this morning. Or most unoriginal thing you could say, I guess.
Anyway, speaking of the Champions League, attention turns to it this evening. Liverpool need to avoid defeat in Salzburg if they want to progress to the last 16. The holders kick off their Group E match in Austria at 5-6. If they lose, Genk need to beat Napoli in the other group match to save the Reds. So that'll be a nervy one there for Klopp. But he says that motivation won't be an issue.
We are not a typical Champions League winner last year or finalist 2 years before. We are still ambitious like crazy. We will go for everything. We will run for our lives. So that's what we are. Plus playing football. It's not that we come here and think we have to dominate Salzburg. We will fight in each challenge.
I don't think anyone would have predicted at the start that it'd come down to their final game. Chelsea as well require victory against French club Lille at Stamford Bridge if they want to secure passage to the last 16, and their Group H game gets going at 8 o'clock. Leeds will return to the summit of the Championship provided they take all 3 points against Hull City at Ellen Road tonight. In Gaelic games, a new luminous yellow sliotar is to come into operation for hurling in 2020. The Smart Sliotar, as it's being called, will have a microchip that's for integrity around the ball not travelling too far. It's also yellow in colour to aid sight and judgment of controversial decisions at venues where there's no Hawkeye technology. Elsewhere then, the newly shortened GAA Championship season, which now wraps up in August, has had an impact upon the sales of O'Neill's replica jerseys, with their pre-tax profits falling by a sizable 18% to €1.3 million last year. Rory McIlroy has explained why he decided not to take part in the Saudi International Golf event, which takes place early next year. Players have been criticised by many for attending the tournament, which is in the country that has a questionable human rights record. McIlroy says he'd prefer to stay in America.
You could say that about so many countries, not just Saudi Arabia. You could say that about a lot of countries that we play in, that there's a reason not to go. But for me, it's just, I just don't want to go. I don't want to travel that far. I think the atmosphere looks better at the events on the West Coast, and I'd much rather play in front of, big golf fans and play in a tournament that really excites me.
And there's horse racing then today at Tramore. The first there is off at 12:20.
Yeah, Rory really taking a stand there, putting us all on notice that he's going to be a leader of human beings for the next decades. Thanks, Anne-Marie. 8:45, we're going to talk Patrick Reed with John Duggan at around about 9:15 a.m. or so this morning. Obviously, I don't know if you saw the footage of him. It was a good bunker shot. Have you seen the footage? No. So you don't know what you're talking about then, 9:15?
No, I actually don't. I've no idea, to be honest with you. Not a Patrick Reed bunker shot. There's some renewed beef.
There's a good bit of sand coming off the back of it when he's lifting it. Almost as if he's grounded the club and improved his lie.
A man who's got an exemplary record sheet when it comes to...
Another stand-up human being, Patrick Reed.
Has Rory accused him?
No, Rory's saying that Patrick Reed needs to get a break.
Okay.
Poor Patrick Reed. This is just... It's because he is previous that we're all talking about this. But actually, it looked pretty blatant. We'll also have an update on the poll in just a couple of minutes' time. Got a piece coming up at 9 o'clock with the author Cormac Moore on the birth of the border. Paul Rice also discussed the impact that partitions had on Irish football as well. So that's all coming up a little bit later on. Right, so that's what we're doing now, actually. Yeah. So Paul Rice also discussed the impact that partitions had on Irish football. Have a look.
The fact that on an island this small, that there are 2 leagues, 2 cups, etc., is an absolute nonsense. And that is an abject failure of leadership on both sides of the border. By the way, you have clubs, north and south, who are wallowing themselves in semi-professionalism or low-grade professionalism or amateurism, whichever way you want to look at it. And the fact is that they have not managed to come together and build a structure to benefit all is just, it's insane.
Because it's funny, because John Taylor, the unionist politician, is he Lord Kilclooney now or whatever, but he's often a bit of a wind-up merchant on Twitter, and he put out a tweet on Friday when all this came out that the FAI, should just come under the umbrella of the IFA and be like all the other, be like hockey, rugby. And I think he thought he was winding people up, but the amount of people from the south that rode in behind him said, yeah, we agree, we should do that. That would be great.
And for 30 years, that's what. For 30 years, they refused to.
Are all the major sports on a 32 county basis now, except soccer?
Well, there were splits in cycling and in athletics.
But they joined
for a long time. But you have like everything from. They're essentially the border was ignored in a whole range of different sorts, or was accommodated in a provincial structure. But soccer is amazing. It's amazing what happened in soccer.
Yeah, you should go on.
Sorry, we'll come back to that in just a moment. We're turning our attention to GAA because it is the most wonderful time of the year. You will have seen yesterday that Roscommon GAA, aka Club Rossi, have stepped up their efforts in the fundraising stakes. This year, they are offering you the opportunity to win a house in a raffle, but it is not just any old house. It is a home in London. The boom is back, ladies and gentlemen. But a big sorry to everybody involved. It is nowhere near the best ever prize offered by a GAA organisation. We are taking a trip down memory lane, and we're starting right here with Lown Rangers, who previously offered a Mediterranean cruise, but that was only the first prize, or a limousine heifer. And can we just get that back up again for the greatest Photoshop job of all time? Hey. The heifer on top of the massive yacht. You could have won some turf, though, if you're a member of Kilfian GAA. €2 entry for that whole heap of turf. Now, St. Rina's also got involved in the club game, or in the turf game, I should say. They didn't clarify, though, if they'd load the turf into a trailer for you. They'd only offer you this, which was basically your turf getting footed in one evening by the St. Rina's senior hurling team. Entry only €5 per line, or 3 lines for €10. If purchasing 3 lines, we suggest you use 1 line for a worthy neighbour or a friend. So the senior hurlers would foot your turf for you, perhaps put it in to a trailer as well. Now, this one, Park Ratheniska, we're offering a shed. Not just any shed, this shed. Win this shed for €5. Park Engineering, all in favour of Park Ratheniska GAA. Do you fancy winning a J1?
Yeah.
Well then, step on up, Kilroran McDonough's GAA Club in association with the Spillane Group New York. Win a J1 job. Are you and a friend ready for the best summer of your lives? 2-bay jobs.
Wow.
Free return flights to New York. Accommodation included. Asterisk. Tickets, €10. And that was from 2015, as you can see there. But the greatest event that's ever taken place in GAA circles was the St. Thomas Pre-Club All-Ireland Final Festival. It was a week, and we can see here on Friday the 8th, you got Fix It Friday, table quiz. Saturday the 9th, you had Dancing to Croker. But I want to focus your attention on Sunday the 10th, which was a week till Sunday monster auction and free barbecue. Auction items include holidays, livestock, farm feeds, lingerie. Incredible. Let's have a look at some of these specific things that you could actually win in the auction. 4 bales of silage was up from Mike Kelly. 10 bags of bull beef. 1 gallon fluke dose. What is fluke dose?
It's a dose to prevent fluke.
Thank you very much. Galans and Greenvale Feeds, 20 bag elite beef ration, €190. There's more here as well. There was some a horse castration up for offer, TV and video cabinets, and 10 bales of briquettes. Quite simply, the best festival that has ever taken place on this island. Sorry, Electric Picnic.
What was the story of the lingerie?
I have no idea, actually. There was no clarification on that. St. Thomas, if you want to step on up and actually inform us on that. The last thing is this, because this is actually probably the best auction that is, or the most famous auction. This was from Corduff Gales earlier this year. Look at number 9, 2 load of quarried stone, sponsored by Phil Connolly, was up for grabs. Number 3 was a heifer, 6-month-old heifer, but without question, the best part of it was number 5, a graveyard plot for 2 of your choice in Corduff or Raffara Cemetery. Now, speaking to the Irish Independent afterwards, Seamus McEnany, who's involved with the club, said, "The prize was priceless because you can't buy a plot here in the village before someone passes away. Inevitably, death will come to us all. So this really is a priceless prize. We have a choice of 2 chapels and 2 cemeteries, and you can't pick your plot in either cemetery until after someone dies. So a very practical gift indeed." So there you go. Congratulations to Club Rossi on getting an apartment in London, but it just doesn't cut it in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, Club Rossi obviously doing very well.
Very well.
Raised loads and loads of money for Roscommon.
The Connacht counties are flying in the administration stakes these days.
Certainly in the ability to raise money, they're doing okay.
These house raffles are actually ridiculously lucrative, I should say, by not ludicrous, lucrative by all accounts. Wasn't there a story last year that they were like just turning over? Was it Louth, a club in Louth, turned over huge profits, like hundreds of thousands in the financial stakes. So it's a smart idea. It works, and imagine that you just like sign up to a raffle and you're stuck with a piece of property in London.
I mean, stuck with sounds
bad.
No, it'd be great, wouldn't it? Just you know, you could donate it to charity.
That would be a very benevolent thing to do. Don't give the wrong idea to anybody who actually wants to win it though.
It's a big old prize. You know, the administration of that and all the money is a very difficult thing to do as well. Just like on a serious note, I think it is John Fogarty today pointing out that so many of the administrators who reach county board level are amateur, and the amounts of money that these county boards are turning over and the debt that they have is huge, and they not necessarily always from an accountancy background don't always automatically know how to deal with this stuff, and it brings with it its own pressure. This is in light of the comments from Tracy Kennedy that we talked about on yesterday's pay-per-view, when she said she was finding it difficult to marry the day job and the stresses of actually being in charge of the Cork County Board. So I don't know, is this model that we've had for 100 years, is it the best model for the proper governance of large sums of money?
It's not, and it's something that we've seen more of in recent years, which would suggest that it's not going to get better anytime soon. County boards getting into sticky situations where it might not be malpractice whatsoever, it just might be a lack of experience or a lack of having the tools at your disposal to actually properly fund a county board operation, which are professional operations, or they should be professional operations. Now, a lot of, I guess, county boards here and there do have full-time professional people in commercial departments, but perhaps there just needs to be a little bit more done from Central Council or from Croke Park to actually try and arrest this at the moment, because I do think it's becoming more and more apparent that we're on a bit of a slide here where funds are just being... there just isn't the experience to use them correctly.
Eoin O'Farrell's report on was it GA 150, whatever what was the report called? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, so it would have been for the 150th anniversary in 2034 or something.
And it was largely shelled, right? Like, it didn't really see the light of day properly, but most of the ideas in that, which are in the Examiner today, seem to be trying to modernise the corporate governance sections of the entire organisation. So the Director General would actually be a CEO, the management committees would merge to form a board of directors, which would have a maximum of 16 members. There would be a beefing up of administration at local level. The provincial councils would be broken down into population centres as opposed to the 4 provincial councils, because ultimately, again, that's just something that we inherited and isn't necessarily the best way of governing the country. Anyway, I guess we'll come back to that at some point. 8:54 a.m. this morning. We can update you on the polls to see how things are going. It's one-way traffic so far. Katie Taylor's 2012 Gold is 72%. Leinster's 2011 Comeback is 28%. Is this not the most D4 versus the country vote ever? Asks Ian on Twitter with the cry laughing emoji. And certainly the Munster rugby fans are hijacking this one early. Vote early and vote often is what Eoin's telling his friends on his Kerry Mafia WhatsApp group.
Katie Taylor, the best, I don't know, you're going to make some, I don't know what Munster rugby joke you're going to make here or something like that. If she was from Munster, it'd be an easy one to make.
Jonathan Breach is pretty sure this is just a wind-up at this stage. No, we're just getting through this round. There are no passengers in the quarterfinals, are there?
No, there isn't. The only passengers really was Louth against Meath, and that got knocked out immediately in the first round of 16 match. So, there is going to be no it's going to get good. Like, I would encourage people to stick with it, because things are going to get tense. This is going to be a landslide already. We can tell from early on. It is going to take
Friday's press conference from the FAI. Can we grandfather that into like a team 9, team 33 style? We've automatically put you into the quarterfinals?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Let's just go ahead and break our own rules. Let's just casually do that, Ger.
All right, it's 8:55. Last night, Matt Williams discussed the passing of the torch between Rob Kearney and Jordan Larmour. He thinks the 22-year-old needs now to be Ireland's starting fullback.
He's developed and learnt and moved forward. What he brings is what a 34-year-old Robbie Kearney can't bring anymore. He's been so good, Rob Kearney, so consistent, and I'm never going to say a word against him, because he's just given his all for Leinster and Ireland, and he's beyond criticism. But he is in his early 30s. And what Lama has got is gas and footwork, and you just can't coach that. That's either there or it's not. Yeah. Once he's got his positional play right, when you put that footwork and gas in, he's got the number 15 jersey for Ireland now. There's no doubt about that. He's got it now. Doesn't mean we've seen the end of Rob Kearney for Leinster, and it doesn't mean if there's an injury he won't come back for Ireland. But I think there is going to be a changing of the guard, and we just saw the reason why on Saturday.
Yeah, so Matt Williams there talking about the changing of the guard at the full-back position, and I guess the fact that Leinster went with a first choice at this point means that decision's largely made, is it? Rob Kearney, you wouldn't write him off getting that job back, and obviously injuries can intervene, etc., but Larmour's playing well. Yeah,
Larmour's the best full-back in Ireland at the moment. It's simple as that. I think it's fairly clear-cut, especially, as we were saying earlier on, this is a free hit at the Six Nations. If you want to just come back to, well,
is it?
You're
what if it goes wrong? Then there's no free
convinced.
Hit. Well, no, because it's the opposite of free hit in this country. We're going to massively overreact to every defeat or mistake that Andy Farrell makes instead of going, he's a new coach who's got a long period of time, who should actually be given the opportunity to make mistakes. We'll be like, no, this is further proof that everything's gone to shit. Like, give the man a break, I say. No, it should be a free hit, but it won't be a free hit.
I would say that you can make an argument that all the Six Nations should now be free hits until we finally get past the World Cup quarter-final. But I guess the closer you move towards a World Cup, the less of a free hit it will become. Now, the thing is, there will be a lot of... The line that will be used if Ireland have a bad Six Nations will be the Joe Schmidt era has not gone away. Andy Farrell is tainted by the association with Joe Schmidt and the failure at the 2019 World Cup, which is probably... definitely very unfair, and we need to actually see what he brings as his own man as a head coach. And part of that should be, I think, a no-brainer, starting Jordan Larmour at fullback. He's the best thing we've got, possibly in the back three at the moment in Ireland.
Certainly you can have a pretty exciting back three if you pick the players who are on form and who were informed during the World Cup. Anyway, let's move on. Just a minute before 9 this morning, you're watching OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The best place to watch the show is on YouTube. If you hit subscribe and turn on notifications, then every morning when we go live on your phone, you get a little ping and goes, ooh, the lads are live, and hit the button and we'll pop up. We're back with Cormac Moore on his new book, Birth of the Border, The Impact of Partition in Ireland, straight after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Now broadcasting 24 hours a day. Live on the Go Loud app, Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Google Home, tune in, and offtheball.com/radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
From music to rock out to, chill out to, and dance to. From sweater weather to workout playlists. Whatever mood you're in, Go Loud has music to match. Download the Go Loud app now or add us on your smart speaker. Go Loud. Podcasts, radio, and music to your ears. Go Loud!
OTB AM.
Birth of the Border, The Impact of Partition in Ireland is Cormac Moore's brand new book. There's some great stuff in it on sport. It's the last chapter of the book, and we're focusing on that this morning with Cormac himself in studio. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Eoin.
Let's start with the GAA, because it's the one that probably comes most to mind when you think about the balance between politics and sport in Ireland. Post-partition, how did the GAA reflect on it? I presume it was something that they pushed to one side and ignored when the news initially came through.
Yeah, well, the GAA, as you would imagine, being a nationalist body, as well as primarily a Catholic body as well, were totally anti-partition, vehemently opposed to it. But they did have to accept the reality of it when Northern Ireland was created. And it's actually reflected in Ulster province in particular, in that for the first 20 plus years of Northern Ireland, so from 1921 to the early 40s, very few Ulster football finals were actually played in the 6 counties of the Ulster Championship. They actually were all played in either Cavan or Monaghan. And this actually was reflected in the on the field as well, where Cavan and Monaghan totally dominated. So there was like it really affected people's ability to play games, to organise clubs in the 6 counties, because the Ulster, the Unionist government, did believe it was a seditionist organisation, the GAA. So they did everything they could to, like local authorities that were controlled by Unionists, put a lot of obstacles in the way of the GAA to organise games. Famously, the Ulster football final of 1922, the whole Monaghan football team was arrested on the way to that final. Now, there's very strong claims, and they had guns on them, and there's very strong claims that they're not just there to play a football game. They also were there to free 3 prisoners from Derry jail, and that probably is the case. But it actually did escalate the violence in the north in the early 1922. The Free State Provisional Government, Michael Collins' Provisional Government, reacted to those kidnappings. To the arrests of those Monaghan footballers by actually kidnapping 40 to 50 loyalists along the border on Tyrone Fermanagh. And it really escalated tensions and led to increased sectarian violence, which had coloured the creation of the North from 1920 to 1922. So the GAA, was many GAA members, like many other Catholics, including people who weren't involved in the IRA, were interned from 1922 to 1924 on the prison ship, the Argenta. So it really affected the GAA as an organisation. But in terms, though, of how the GAA association dealt with partition, they did tend to ignore it. And people in 6 counties asked for a special officer, because they were so affected compared to other jurisdictions and counties in Ireland. They asked for a separate, a special organiser to help grow the game there, because it was so affected. But the Central Council said no, there wasn't going to happen. So,
that's interesting when you think about some of the characters around the GAA at the time. Like Eoin O'Duffy would have been Ulster GAA secretary.
Of course,
Like, was there? So you said that there was kind of pleas for a separate Northern Irish or above the border sort of committee set up.
They never used the name Northern Ireland.
That's why I corrected myself there.
Or 6 counties. It was never, and that was obviously official Irish government policy for decades as well, never to use that name Northern Ireland, as if that would magically make it disappear.
Like, was this part of the reason why perhaps people in the south didn't get too involved with it, that there might have been a sense of abandonment in the north?
Well, like
the
whole nationalist minority community in the north would be justified in thinking they were abandoned, not just from a sporting perspective, but also politically as well. And the early years of the Irish Free State would suggest they were right. So yes, the GAA would fall into that category as well. And it was interesting the way they changed the rules as well. So they got rid of their bans on people who joined forces in Ireland, so the Army or the Garda Síochána, but anyone who's in the RUC or the specials were still barred from the GAA. And they also, there was actually a big debate internally within the GAA in 1918, 1919 to anyone who works in the civil service, including teachers, would have to leave their jobs in order to stay in the GAA. They couldn't take an oath to the Crown. But they actually changed that for the North once the partition was created. That any teachers, for example, with the Promissory Oaths Act of 1923, they had to pledge allegiance to the Crown. But the GAA decided to let that drop and that they could stay in the GAA. It's
mad to think what the Ulster Championship would have been had this not been in place, had it been very different, because we think of the great Cavan teams of yesteryear, and like you've just made the point there that they were helped greatly by the fact that there were 6 counties in their very championship which were being held back by partition.
Yeah, look, we don't know what the results would have been if there wasn't all of these obstacles put in the way of the 6 counties. But we do know that Cavan dominated for the first 3 decades of partition, and Monaghan did well too. So and all of the games, the big games, tend to be held in the particularly Monaghan and Cavan, but the 3 counties of Ulster that weren't in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, let's move on to rugby, because it's interesting. It's very different, far more accommodating from Dublin towards those north of the border.
So much just too accommodating for north
that's
of the border.
it. What's your view on it?
Yes, I like most of the rugby's interesting that there were nationalists who played rugby, particularly the further from Dublin you went. But the administrators tended to be unionists in outlook, be it up north or in Dublin. Most of them came from Trinity College, most of them were Protestant, and most of them had a unionist outlook. And a perfect example of that was the they refused to play the tricolour in Lansdowne. So they used to have like rugby internationals used to be alternated between Lansdowne Road and Ravenhill in Belfast. In fact, the Dublin organisation, the IRFU, decided not to expand Lansdowne Road, so they actually could build a stadium for Ravenhill. So it was really helping Ulster rugby. But what they decided to do when they held internationals, they decided to play the Union Jack still in Ravenhill. But instead of playing the tricolour, they actually played a four provinces, held a four provinces flag in Lansdowne Road.
Right.
And the actual Irish Free State government had to intervene and said you must play the tricolour. So they had no problem playing the Union Jack up in the north, but they did not want to play the tricolour in the south. So there was loads of examples, like they didn't countenance Sunday rugby, which Sabbatarianism is definitely was very strong within the Protestant community, and they did go out of their way to make sure that they accommodated Ulster rugby, and that's one of the main reasons why it never split. It never partitioned.
It's very interesting, just the complete divergence in opinion from the GAA and rugby. Not all that surprising. Like we see in the Gaelic Athlete, which you cite in the book here. This is one of my favourite parts. The Gaelic Athlete depicted soccer and rugby as exotic imitations of Britishness, describing Irishmen who played those codes as blatant imperialists for all Ireland to roll itself up in the Union Jack and sing and toast Irish nationality with a leer on its lying lip, which is great poetry. It's poisonous stuff. It's
well, that was a GAA, though. The GAA tended to sometimes exaggerate things and also exaggerate its own anti-imperialism or anti-partitionist stance, when the truth is often somewhere in between.
Did people, was there kind of a real political feeling within those playing the games at that point? There's clearly been a very strong connection between the GAA and politics. Were people who were picking up a rugby ball in parts of the south of Ireland kind of feeling more sympathetic towards the unionist cause?
Well, it depends on where they came from and how closely they were involved to the violence. But we have to remember that the violence itself from, say, 1919 to 23, when the Civil War ended, it was in pockets in the country. It wasn't all over the country. Yeah. So if you were in Munster, you couldn't get away from the impact of the wars. But with most parts of the country, you wouldn't. Dublin, they had a lot of instances of violence, but most people went along their daily business as before. So, it didn't affect them that much. Now, there was a cricket game in Trinity College Dublin in 21, and it was between the gentlemen of Ireland versus the gentlemen of the military. And the IRA shot in from the gates on Nassau Street, and a woman got hit and got killed, a spectator, Kathleen Wright. She was engaged to be married. So, that's where kind of the violence impacted on people either playing or watching games. That was a particularly sad incident. And there was
cricket is very interesting because we had Paul Rouse in a few months ago talking about the history of cricket, going back to how it was Ireland's most popular game in the mid-19th century.
Exactly, yeah.
But amongst both classes, amongst both religions.
You go to Tipperary and Kilkenny, maybe that's why they're so good at hurling. Cricket was huge in those counties in the mid-19th century. And it was played by both religions. But that did change, though, over the decades. That did change. As the Irish Ireland movement grew in popularity, and the GAA introduced its foreign games bans, which only included four sports, by the way, the foreign games bans, which was rugby, soccer, hockey and cricket. So it wasn't really foreign games, it was British games that it was against. Cricket did see itself retreating, I suppose, in terms of popularity within the nationalist Catholic community, that by the partition, the onset of partition, it was primarily a Protestant upper-class sport.
That changed things.
It did. Well, I would suggest that cricket was not governed as an All-Ireland body. There was an Irish Cricket Union, but the Northern Cricket Union refused to join it for decades. They felt they were being unfairly treated, a bit like what the South, the Leinster felt in soccer, in that there was a bias, there was a Dublin bias in terms of cricket, that all the venues were either in Dublin or in Bray or in Munster. Most of the international teams or the Gentlemen of Ireland teams were based in the South. So they didn't want to get involved in an Irish Cricket Union, but they changed literally after partition, which was unusual. The Irish Cricket Union actually became united after partition in the early 20s because there was a real effort by Leinster to make sure that Ulster would join, Northern Cricket Union would join. They started giving them representation on the Irish cricket team. They started giving them games up in Belfast. So, they really made an effort to make sure that the Ulster and the Northern team was accommodated.
Is it fair to say that the organisation that managed partition best was the IABA? Like, I know they were operating on a smaller scale than the GA and rugby, but just from reading the chapter, and like you cannot judge anything on what happens a century later, but obviously the continued success on both sides of the divide is something that's been notable from Irish boxing. It's been notable on rugby as well, but we've already discussed it. It seems that IABA managed to maintain something of a status quo.
Yeah, they did. For sports like rugby, hockey, bowls, cricket, and even the GA, it was easier for them to stay united because the people in the sport were generally from the same group. It's a homogeneous group in terms of either Catholic or Protestant. They're the same mix of people basically that play those games. But then you have boxing, which is very like soccer. It's very popular within the Protestant and Catholic communities, and there was never a question of boxing dividing. And they always felt they should be united. And even the fact that the security forces, who politically and security-wise would have had nothing to do with each other, but when it came to boxing competitions, which they had a huge part in, like Eoin Duffy, as we mentioned earlier, he was very heavily involved in boxing as well. The Gardaí would actually go up over the border to competitions, and same with the RUC. And what the IABA did as well, which was a lot of sports that remained united did, they gave more devolution to the different provincial councils, like Ulster, like Connacht and Leinster. So they allowed them to be semi-autonomous in terms of running their own affairs, but then they would gather together in terms of international competitions and national competitions as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how that managed to progress through the decades as well with these almost unthinkable sporting events.
Remember Wayne McCullough, a lad from a Protestant lad from Belfast, bring out tricolour in the '92 Olympics. So that would have been heard of obviously in soccer. So it just shows what boxing has contributed and what boxing contributed to the peace process as well. In recent times. So it is an incredible cross community involvement that sport has had.
Really is. We'll finish with football, and I cannot believe that there was some internal politics going on in the IFA or
Could you believe it? In this week of weeks, in terms of the FAI, there's internal problems. Before I start, I've done a lot of research on soccer split with my last book, The Irish Soccer Split, and a lot of people, like previous historians, previous commentators, assumed because soccer split in 1921, the same year Ireland was partitioned, that it was because of the political partition. And just from further research and from many years' research now, yes, of course it increased tensions, the political goings-ons, and there was definitely incidents that were related to the political turmoil in Ireland at the time. But at the root of the division in soccer is without doubt the internal politics of the IFA. So for listeners and viewers, the IFA was an All-Ireland body. The Irish Football Association, founded in 1880. It was so for over 40 years. But the people in Leinster, in Dublin in particular, felt there was a Belfast bias in terms of selection of players, selection of venues, and even coffers, the distribution of finances, the representation on the different IFA council committees, as well as the IFA council, and this was going on for decades. There was loads of points where the Leinster Football Association could have left the IFA, but it reached a boiling point in 1921 when Shelbourne, who the IFA decided that year that no games would be held in Dublin because of the violence, even though there was as much violence in Belfast as there was in Dublin at the time. So Shelbourne went up to Belfast for a Irish Cup semi-final game against Glenavon, a Lurgan-based team, and that game was a draw. So the natural assumption was it would be held in Dublin, the replay. But the IFA said no, Shelbourne had to go back up again, and they said no, they weren't going to do it. The Leinster Football Association backed him, and with that the FAI was born. And now what shows to me as well that it was all to do with internal politics was that for the following decade, from 1921 to 1932, there were a number of conferences, there was a lot of correspondence between the IFA and FAI to try and heal the division, to try and reunite, particularly when it came to one international team. And so the IFA never wanted to just be governed for the 6 counties. Yeah. They always felt they were an All-Ireland body, and that they were the national body of the whole island of Ireland, even though they did ignore huge parts of Ireland. And the FAI never wanted to be a partitionist body either. In their first few years, they had 23 teams from the Falls Road, the Falls District League. In fact, one of the teams, Alton United, won the FAI Cup in 1923. So they weren't a partitionist body either. But the FIFA involvement and even the other British associations made it transpire that they did become partitionists in many ways. But it was internal politics that was the main driver of that division.
Yeah, it certainly was. Just before we wrap up, like you mentioned the Irish soccer split there, 2015, I think you wrote that book, was it?
Yeah.
So obviously a lot has happened since then, both in politics and in footballing politics. I know obviously there's been the documentary done since then on RT as well, which you were part of, I think, which has obviously happened post-Brexit. But like it is interesting thinking about how much has even changed since you put pen to paper on that book. And even if you just keep it to football politics for a moment, like to talk with the All-Ireland League this year, how our own football association in the South anyway is falling to pieces at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's tragic. But is it that surprising though, the way the organisation's been run? You know, it probably is the extent to which it's falling apart is somewhat surprising. But
you wonder to yourself if there was ever. I'm sure you were thinking to yourself when writing the book. Is there ever and you were asked as well on the show, I remember, is there ever a point in the future when things might actually go back to the way they were? Like, if there's any point it's going to happen, you'd imagine that date is fast approaching when somebody is actually thinking about it, because our football matters in the Republic of Ireland anyway are a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's hard to say because unfortunately logic often hasn't come into it when it comes to the FAI and IFA on this matter of whether it is. I think the FAI have always entertained the idea of having an All-Ireland team at least. The IFA are a bit more reluctant, even though they did have conferences during the 70s, during the height of the Troubles, to have an All-Ireland team. So, you know, it can happen. I've always believed, and I still do believe, that I think we're going to qualify for Euro competitions in the future, simply by the fact that half of Europe qualifies from here on in. So it's going to be hard not to in some years. Although I'd say there's a good chance. Well, obviously, one of the Irish teams will not be qualifying in March. But the World Cup's where it's really going to be seen, because you're going to have, like, in future, this anti-democratic way that Europe and South America have so much teams is going to change. And you're going to see a lot more power coming in within Africa and Asia. So you're going to have European teams squeezed out of the competition, the World Cup competition, and you're going to have African and Asian teams getting a lot more places. And that's going to make it practically impossible for two Ireland teams have a chance of qualifying for the World Cup. So that might, lack of success, I think, might drive the two teams to think about having an Irish international team. I can't see in the the long distant future. If we have two Irish teams, either of them qualifying for a World Cup competition. So that's where we might see it. It's still a long way off, and it may never happen. Like, it's 100 years now almost since the split has happened, and there have been loads of attempts to heal it, and there's loads of justifiable reasons to heal it. But like look at the IFA, for example. With the national anthem. If they were really serious about including the nationalist community in their team and in their support, should they still be playing God Save the Queen as a national anthem? And they refuse to discuss that issue.
Yeah. The final question, and it's probably the most complicated one, is you mentioned almost 100 years on since this. It's a question that's come up, something that's been thrown out there. How do you view sport in Ireland if one day there was a united Ireland once again? What would happen to these organisations? Would it be for better or for worse? Because as we can see from your chapter in this book, the impact after partition was fairly significant. Yeah, but in sport, it did affect all sports, but most sports are all-Ireland bodies, so if there was a United Ireland, they would continue on as before. So soccer and athletics are the two main sports, and motor racing as well, are the main sports that were partitioned, and soccer is the one that sticks out. So I would see there would have to compromise on flags and anthems and different emblems, and there may be less jobs for people in the FAI and IFA. But I think it would be very straightforward, to be honest with you. I think people in the South certainly would support. Most people would support an All-Ireland team. Not so much in the North, but it still is. There's been a lot of polls done, and there's been a majority support for an All-Ireland team in the North as well. Even about 40% in the Protestant community, which I found quite surprising. So I think an All-Ireland team in a United Ireland would be the least of the problems the United Ireland would have to worry about. Yeah, I think that's a conversation for another day, all those other problems. Yeah. It's called Birth of the Border, the Impact of Partition in Ireland, and I guarantee you, if you pick it up for Christmas, you'll learn something new pretty much every page. Cormac Moore, thanks a million for popping in. So, cheers.
OTB AM. This This is OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
John Duggan is in studio. How are you, John?
Good on yourself?
Very well. We're talking Patrick Reed, the villainous, slimy Patrick Reed. What's happened?
Well, he's denied cheating last weekend in the Bahamas in the Hero World Challenge, which even isn't a sanctioned PGA Tour event. It's Tiger Woods' event. And it's kind of one of these end of season, start of new season things. So he got a 2-stroke penalty for improving his lie when he moved sand with his practice swing in this Hero Challenge on Friday. So he put his wedge behind the ball twice. The sand flung backwards in the process. That resulted in an improved lie. And according to Rule 8.1, grounding your club and taking practice swings must not improve conditions affecting your stroke. So we got a 2-shot penalty. But in the world of golf, any kind of impropriety is seen as a very, very much a no-no. So there's Cameron Smith, who was criticising Reed. He didn't associate the word cheat with Reed, but said cheating. And Reed has denied cheating. He said he didn't intend to improve his position. But it doesn't look good on the camera. Now, with all these things, there is the camera in slow motion and there's a camera in real time. So there's always, when you look at something in slow motion, it looks terrible. And then when you look at it in real time, it doesn't look as bad. But sand did move behind the ball. So the question is whether it was intentional or not. And that's very difficult to prove either way.
Have you seen this often in recent times in professional golf? I can't really recall many instances myself.
I remember Dustin Johnson at the PGA. This wasn't a allegation of cheating around Dustin Johnson in the 2010 PGA. It's more that he didn't realise he was in a bunker or a waste bunker, and he didn't realise what the protocols were. So that there was a different instance to this. But the thing with Patrick Reed is he's always had controversy follow him throughout his career. So in college, when he was at the University of Georgia, there was accusations that he cheated and stole from teammates, which he denied vehemently. He said he was dismissed from Georgia for alcohol violations. At the Ryder Cup, he's been Captain America, the villain, shushing the crowd at Gleneagles, and then thrashing Jim Furyk last year when Europe hammered the USA and France, falling out with Jordan Spieth publicly. I don't know if Jordan fell out with him, but just criticising him. Has had an estranged relationship with his parents, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it is one unusual that when he won the Masters at Augusta in 2018, his parents, Bill and Jeanette, who live in Augusta, weren't involved in the whole party. And that's been an estranged relationship for quite a long time. So there's a lot of controversy and smoke has followed Patrick Reed throughout his career. And the most interesting thing is the reaction of the peers. Generally, they've been rallying around him this week, because the thing about it is this week, the Americans are taking on the international team in the President's Cup. This is almost like the kind of the unofficial, enjoyable party Ryder Cup.
The Ryder Cup is enjoyable and a party in itself.
No, the Ryder Cup has always got that little bit of an edge, bit of an edge. Maybe it's enjoyable because Europe win it all the time. But the Ryder Cup has always got a little bit of
for golfers, it's less enjoyable, but for us, it's great.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I still feel a bit of the competitive spirit when I think of the Ryder Cup and the Americans. But the President's Cup has got none of that. It's an exhibition, really. And Tiger Woods is the playing captain this week. So all Tiger Woods and Ernie Els and Rory McIlroy, all they've had to do is answer questions about Patrick Reed.
What have they said?
They've said that, look, he's a good guy. Maybe, it's something that, it can't really, you have to be very careful about these kind of things. But generally the feeling has been that we think this guy's a good guy and we don't think he's going out to intend to cheat, even though the word hasn't been used. So it's just funny. I think he's going to get absolutely slaughtered by the fans in Australia. It's in Royal Melbourne Golf Club. I think he's going to get slaughtered. Like, he is a villain already, and then to get involved in the situation, I can't call him a cheat on Off the Ball AM because I don't know if there was intent there. But what I do know is that controversy has followed Patrick Reed throughout his whole career. Sometimes people can revel in that and generate a competitive spirit to improve your own performance. But I don't think he can really get involved in many more incidents. Be my kind of view on it. I don't think he can get involved in an incident like this again. Like, even watching it, I watched it. It was a waste area. It wasn't a bunker. A bunker is generally when you have a lip or between the ball and the kind of the area that you're hitting over. Whereas this is just a waste area where it's just kind of like natural sand. So you are allowed to ground your club and you are allowed to take practice swings, which you're not allowed to in a bunker. But you're not allowed to, brush sand behind the ball. And it's getting to the stage where Justin Thomas is taking the mick down there and on videos of him just like scraping sand behind it. So it's creating a jokey narrative which isn't good for Patrick Reed. And like, first of all, he grounded the club, and then in the replay would show the sand move backwards, and he did it twice. And then he went over to the left and he starts taking these wild swings. I don't know why are you doing that? I kind of found that a bit of an odd thing to do.
Because he wanted to show that he was actually having a practice swing, and the initial. Obviously, I'm going to give Patrick Reed the benefit of the doubt.
Well, you can't say that he intentionally. You cannot say the intentionally, unless it was. It would have to be even more obvious than it was. He made a bogey in the hole. The thing about it is, it's Patrick Reed. So what is it? The boy cried wolf. You know what's going to happen until get his fairy tales here. But Patrick Reed, there's always going to be, oh, you're the villain. And if it was, say, Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods, would you have the same suspicions? He got the penalty. They penalised him for it, for improving conditions affecting his stroke. And that's the end of it. But because it's him, I'm just fascinated to see what is a thing that is not on anybody's radar, really, the President's Cup. It's a nice exhibition.
And that's why I like Patrick Reed. He gives us.
He's now made the President's Cup interesting.
Yeah. Like, I don't get the sort of casual golf fans' hatred of Patrick Reed. It's like, I don't know. I think that there was obviously the epic Ryder Cup singles match between himself and Rory McIlroy. What year was that? 2016.
Yeah.
Like that was amazing. That is for me the highlight of the Ryder Cup outside of Medina this entire decade. It's one of the most memorable moments. It is absolutely. It's what sport is all about, having somebody to dislike. And maybe everybody's kind of with me on that, but I think there's kind of a deeper dislike for the reasons that you stated there, and I don't know, I think we should just park it to one side and accept the villain that he is.
Well, he thrives on that, I think, a bit. And but I do think also in golf, like any kind of suspicion of impropriety is a no-no, an absolute no-no. When Simon Dyson got into a bit of trouble, a few years ago, and I remember reading about his peers like not really being too keen on playing with him. It's one of those sports. It's like plagiarism in journalism. You just can't do it. It is a complete no-no. You don't go there. We're not saying he intentionally cheated. He had a rules violation, but it is a very, very remember Brian Davis calling like a penalty on himself that nobody had even seen. And this isn't a situation where you have an anorak ringing up a TV station and going, oh, Patrick Reed this, Patrick Reed that, which has happened in previous cases. I think it happened with Graham McDowell, I think, once. This is the tour people going, no, this is a little bit too obvious now for some anorak to be like getting into microseconds. This actually is pretty evident that this actually happened. And there are people like Lawrence Donegan, the great writer on Twitter, and that, like, killing Patrick Reed and saying that, you are, way out of line, buddy. Because in golf, it is seen as the absolute no-no. You cannot in any way have a 0.1% of impropriety. And even though, because it's just one of those games.
He's obviously been reading too much of that Rick Riley book, Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, why Trump cheats at golf.
Exactly, yeah. John, thanks a million.
All right, on.
Thanks for popping in. That's all for Tuesday mornings, OTB AM. Thanks for being with us this morning. Off the Ball is live on air and online tonight from 7 o'clock. Make sure to subscribe as well to the OTB AM podcast. It's fully time-stamped, making it pretty easy for you to flick between the sections. Remember, OTB AM is Ireland's first and only sports breakfast show. We upload all our best bits to YouTube. You can Chromecast that or watch on Apple TV or on your smart TV. And finally, we will be back with OTB AM tomorrow morning from 7:30. Damien Delaney will be in studio around the Champions League, and we will bring you the story of Luke Keaney. Chat to you then. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sport.